Right, yeah, so he's not producing the way that Barkley can. Also pretty good out of the backfield. But again, not Saquon Barkley, but for almost half the money. They're around the same age. In September, he'll turn 27, so a little bit older. But still, you get him on the cheap.
4.1 yards per carry. So you give him the ball 3 times, you get a first down. 36 missed tackles forced, 26 explosive runs. That's 10 or more yards. So 986 yards last year, 686 after contact. Now, John Runyon Jr., he's the son of former NFL lineman John Runyon. He started 50 of 51 Packer games over the past 3 years, allowed only 2 sacks and 6 quarterback hits and 568 pass block snaps last year. So those are the additions to the Giants. And the Giants end up losing Xavier McKinney, who's a young guy, top of his position. He gets $17 million a year, a 4-year deal from the Green Bay Packers. At some point, you got to keep your players, man.
You got to, but again, it's the safety position, which is basically the running back of the defense. If they can find a safety, which there's a glut of them in free agency at a little bit cheaper, if you're saving $6 million here and $2-3 million there, that's a player. So it's kind of like making a trade in essence, where you let these guys go. But if I'm able to get an extra player with the money that I've saved on it, and we had Jordan on last week, and he talked about the accident. What is it? The ATV accident that he had during going into training camp, and he had some problems with the defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale last year. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but, there was not a perfect player by any stretch of the imagination off the field, but on the field, I thought he was stellar. He was a very, very good player. But if they feel like they can get a similar player for a lot less money, that's the plan. Again, you could disagree with the plan, but that's the plan, because you're not going to be able to replenish this offensive line always through the draft. They've tried that. Free agency seems to be where they want to do it. And if you like Runyon, and you just gave the stats, they're very good. It certainly comes from a very good pedigree. I believe his dad was a congressman, too. A former Eagle.
Current Raven.
That comes at a price, and you need to be able to find the money to be able to do all that.
So a lot of movement today. A lot of movement. Barkley's now, if you just joined us, Barkley's with the Eagles. Garrett Cole's in an MRI tube for his elbow.
Kirk Cousins, the Falcons quarterback.
At $45 million a year.
But, McKinney was a guy that you could have used the franchise tag on, so they didn't. So obviously they didn't think he was worth the money. And also, that's another guy they could have dealt, Michael. If they felt like this was going to be the plan, then we're not going to sign these guys, that maybe they're extra picks that they could have picked up. But again, I don't know what they would have been offered if they decided to trade him, what the situation was there.
Here's Louis Riddick about Saquon to the Eagles, saying it's an easy decision.
If you're Saquon, you're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, and you're going, hold on, this is the #1 team in the NFL in run block win rate last year, and I'm leaving a team that right now can't keep the same group of 5 on the field. I had probably one of my worst years in terms of yardage before initial contact that I've ever had. I'm struggling just to crack 4 per carry behind this offensive line. And look, that's not to disparage the Giants offensive line. That's just the way it is. And you're going to maybe one of the best. If you're him right now, you're going, I got paid more, and I'm going in the division, and I got a better offensive line. Well, Kellen Moore's probably sitting there going, let's go, baby. Let's go to work. Good for Saquon, though. He deserves this. He deserves this opportunity. But you can best believe the pressure will be on him now to go ahead and deliver outsized results.
Now, here's our buddy Dan Orlovsky talking about Saquon to the Eagles on SportsCenter.
That's the surprise of the free agency period in the offseason, because this is so counterintuitive to who the Philadelphia Eagles are. The Eagles are historically an organization that invests into their offensive and defensive lines. They, for the longest time, have not invested, at least free agency-wise, in tailbacks. And the fact that they are taking all that money and investing it into Saquon Barkley tells me that they're starting to transition a little bit, believes that they have their offensive line intact and that Jalen Hurts is going to bounce back, and those pieces on the outside. Saquon Barkley is very much so a Christian McCaffrey type of player, and you don't go and invest in that type of player unless you truly believe unequivocally that you are a bona fide Super Bowl contender. And the Eagles have lost a lot of pieces, and their coordinators last year and then some other players, and they replace him. Now Kellen Moore comes over as their offensive coordinator, one of the more creative minds in the NFL. How he uses Saquon Barkley as something other than just a traditional tailback is going to go a long way to determining, is this worth it? And it was that move outside of the ordinary for the organization worth all the money investment-wise.